You're now live.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Adenike. I am a communication specialist. I welcome you once again to the 2021 International Youth Conference themed New Normal, New Beginnings. So, for 2 days now, we have been having diverse conversations about youth issues with a goal to drive youth action towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in the new normal. And to crown those discussions, today we will be discussing how to rethink education and access to decent work in the new normal for young people living in the global south. So I have with me young leaders from Nigeria who are our panelists for this session. Um, my panelists are going to introduce themselves. I'm going to start from the lady, Goodness, then move to Ebenezer, then Dr. Shadrach. So please kindly unmute and the floor is yours. Goodness, please.
I can go ahead, right?
Yes, please. Kindly introduce
All
yourself.
right. Good day, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're listening to us or watching this. My name is Goodness Ode. I am a young lady from Cross River State, Nigeria. I'm currently living in Calabar, Cross River State, and I work with Nigerian Youth SDGs Network as the programs and project lead, and I am particularly interested in young people development, in health equity, and gender equality. So the work I do cuts across all these areas. I would say I love good food, so it has to be very tasty. And I best describe myself as more than the eyes can see. So it's exciting being here. Thank you so much, Adenike.
Okay, thank you, Goodness. Ebenezer, kindly introduce yourself.
Yes, please. Hi, my name is Ebenezer. Thank you, Nike. My name is Ebenezer Wikina. I'm a journalist by training, but I currently work in the development space with an organization called Pain Foundation. Our work is pretty much advising government in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria on development planning, socio-economic development, and peace building. I also founded a platform called Policy Shapes. It's led by young people, pretty much a platform for policy ideas, um, led by young people around various, global development challenges, especially challenges that we face in Nigeria. So it's a pleasure being here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Shadrach, please. Okay, Shadrach, are you there? Okay, so that's possibly connectivity or some other issues. So once Dr. Shadrach joins us back, or when once he's able to hear us, I'm going to call him to introduce himself. So, anyways, I'm going straight to our conversation today, and like I mentioned, we are discussing rethinking education and access to decent work in the new normal, especially for young people in the global south. And I want to ask first, and I'm directing the question at Goodness because Goodness is currently a student enrolled in a physical university, and like many other students across the world, because of the pandemic, they've been forced to possibly miss an academic year or possibly have to they found themselves in a situation where they had to decide what the schools are closed down, what next? Should I go look for these opportunities or should I enroll in virtual schools? But anyways, let me ask from Goodness herself. And Goodness is someone who is actively developing herself in the development space. So Goodness, how has the pandemic affected you personally?
Okay, so I'm going to respond from in quotes. Say when the pandemic began, it frustrated Nigerian students because it came with, oh, we're going to be stuck for. At first, we thought it would just be a few months, like okay, that was in March. Then the academic session was on hold, and with Nigeria, it was an added the ASU issue. That's the academic staff union, where they had this whole strike issue. So as a student, we're like, maybe this is a break for us to see how everything is going to go ahead. But when we realized that for me, I would say that before it happened, I already had plan B or plan C to what I could do with my time. Firstly, I saw it as an opportunity for me to take deep breaths and focus on a lot of professional development I was working on, some of which were a few fellowships which I applied for and I got selected. And in between, before the corona break happened, I was hoping that I would be able to manage academics with that. But then I would say it was somewhat a good news when we had to just stay at home and I had enough time to focus on those things. But in all honesty, I would not say that was the same case with some of my colleagues, like some other Nigerian students. For some of them, it was like, okay, you are stuck at home. And we had a lot of complaints with some of us adding a lot of weight, being stuck with your parents in quotes, like they'll say a whole comrade like me washing plates and all of that. But I realized a trend with the adjustment that came after some months. We realized that no, Nigeria cannot just hold my life. So I kept in touch with a lot of my friends that period, a lot of my classmates, my colleagues, and students in other universities across Nigeria. And some of us were like, oh, me, I'm already learning tailoring. I'm already learning hairdressing. The guys were like, some of them are learning cinematography, electronics. People realized that this period was something to be able to hold on to. So I had some of my classmates who got married in between. That's good news for them. And for me, I would say I maximize it because, like I said, it was a dream come true for me to have enough time to build on my professional development. I got in on I think 3 fellowships that period, so I had enough time virtually to work on that. Then the development space, I was able to maximize virtually while staying safe. I was able to give in my time, give in my commitment, and I would say that it helped me get to know myself more. Yeah, get to know myself more and get to connect with people more. Like I leverage on the fact that though I may not see you physically, but to just get to know ourselves more, we just get to do things together and I made the best out of it. I would say to a large extent, being a Nigerian student in 2020 was one of the best things that happened to me. Though I lost one academic year, but I count no loss. Yeah, so that's it for me.
Thank you, goodness. And that was you personally. Even though I would want to ask that, what are the things that you had access to that maybe most other students did not have access to? But I'll come to that question later on. Dr. Shadra, can you hear us now? If you can just quickly introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Shadrach Akpem. I'm joining you from Benin State, precisely in Makodi. I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. So I want to ask you, Dr. Shadrach, because on your bio, you are also an entrepreneur. You're a young person. You're a veterinary doctor, and you also have your business. It's a fact that the pandemic has affected young people. Yes, that's a fact. And as humans, we have the
Absolutely.
natural ability to adjust and adapt. So I want you to quickly touch on one or
Yes.
two changes that have happened due to the pandemic. So in the context of education, access to jobs, and entrepreneurship. So one or two changes that have happened due to the pandemic. Yeah. Or if I can rephrase it, what has changed for young people because of the pandemic in this context?
Okay, so thank you very much because those questions are truly very relevant. No one saw the pandemic happening last year. I mean, we started 2020 with a lot of hopes, and we had a lot of plans as to what we hope to achieve. And then COVID-19 happened and the lockdown. So we didn't see it coming. So for education generally in Nigeria, we agree that to a very large extent, everything is done physically. So when it meant that we were going to go on a lockdown, it meant the students were no longer going to resume. But we realized that our friends who were in other parts of the world were having their lectures virtually, and we could only, hear about that. And to us, it was a huge blow because the infrastructure was not there. And in cases where you could even stimulate that, the lecturers themselves, in some instances, didn't have the technical know-how to be able to leverage these gadgets or this digital technology. Some persons literally heard about Zoom last year, Hangout last year. So it was a new thing for them. So what I quickly realized was that it meant jobs were going to move online. And for me, not just as an entrepreneur, because I'm quite passionate about youth development. So part of what I've been doing for the past, give or take 3 or 4 years, has been to remind young people actively that, see, the world is changing, and that age where everything has to happen physically is actually moving. And that is why we need to go digital. So it meant that young people needed to embrace this, or cave in. And one amazing thing about humanity is our ability to adapt. So it was really hard initially, but from businesses going online, even veterinary services, people were going online. Can I have access to a veterinary doctor who will look after my pets, who will check on my farm, to online consultancy, to businesses, delivering their value virtually. So there were a lot of changes, and people needed to build infrastructure to be able to suit this. And if you also notice, the businesses that were able to thrive last year were the ones that had a digital component. Those that depended largely on physical meat and all of those things caved in. They couldn't sustain themselves. So one of the biggest lessons for me was first realizing that reality had beckoned a lot and we didn't listen to it, but we had to learn the hard way. Secondly, we, after acknowledging that, because the first step really to be able to work or change your situation is acknowledging that this is where I am, and this is where I hope to go to. So after acknowledging that, okay, we are behind, we started leveraging these tools, and good enough, we had Zoom, we had Hangout, we had a lot of this online media which we're leveraging to do our meetings, to transact businesses, to also take education. So I remember last year I met with some of my colleagues in a program I attended in Liberia, where we had to set up a training for Africans on how to effectively tailor their CVs, how to learn job skills, and which all will enable them, do their jobs remotely without having to go to any physical location. So for me, there were a lot of learning points, and everything I kept preaching last year, and I'm still preaching, is about, see, you need to be able to have a digital angle around what you're doing, because this is the new normal and there's no other way around it. So you have to embrace this. And I'm happy that a lot of us are coming on board and realizing that this is the new normal and it's difficult, but we are going to succeed, because that's what we do. We're human beings. So that's it for me.
Okay, brilliant. So you shared everything that we're gonna do, especially what is required for the new normal. It's digital skills and being able to maximize digital platforms. So that's a good one. And we'll be okay. Before I proceed, where it's like almost 9 p.m. in Nigeria, and I know that maybe we might be having some challenges, but I would say that my panelists should kindly put on the video when you're talking, so that the audience can see you and be able to follow your conversation very well. Thank you. So
That is noted.
thank you. Yeah. So in continuation from what Dr. Shadrach said, I want to know her specifically now, because one other thing that the pandemic has done is it has exposed missing gaps in different sectors and different systems, and the education system is one. So what are the lessons? What are the lessons for government, academia, private, and civil society? The thing is, I don't want us to dwell more on the problems. I want us to quickly move, because the effects of the pandemic has affected every one of us, every person living. So, and we can see it and we can feel it. So, but can we just identify the lessons and especially the missing gaps that it has exposed in our educational system and other systems in the country. So, Ebenezer, would you want to kindly touch on that briefly? What are the lessons? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you. Is my audio clear? Because my internet just kept fluctuating earlier, so I
Very
wasn't
well.
sure. So if you can hear, okay, okay, great. So if you can hear me, I would say the lessons are many. The lessons abound. But the doctor had talked about, Dr. Shedrack had mentioned a couple of them earlier. Understanding that digital is a new normal, and our new business models need to be built around digital frameworks. The way we view the world needs to go beyond just physical interaction. I don't think we put an end to physical interaction. Somehow we're adapting to find a way to still connect and still have events and things like that. Using social distancing and using our face masks. But I think that physical interaction would evolve sort of. So not we wouldn't need to see face to face for every single thing. A very good example is in our organization, in our foundation. We used to have this thing we call our annual retreats, where we would come together at the end of the year, everyone from various locations, Warri, Port Harcourt, Abuja, and gather in one day, what we've done, our successes, our challenges, etc. And it will cost us millions. Let me not let me not call the amount, but it's going to cost us millions, to fly everyone down and gather us together. But last year rather, we had an annual retreat. We spent maybe a little over 60K or something like that, just to set up virtual points in various offices and various locations. And what we would usually use 5 days to do, we use 3 days to do it. So that's cost savings, time savings, money, just like savings in every ramification, that you can look at. So for even private sector, this is a chance for them to begin to see how they can leverage digital networks to, make their processes faster, um, make their outputs more efficient. And with digital, it means that your market becomes global. So almost instantly, you're reaching almost everyone from wherever you are. With the internet, it's a global village, right? So um, that's a plus, and that can be a minus at the same time. So it means that startups need to begin to think of things like ensuring that their messaging, their branding is more globally compliant, so that people can understand what they're saying, from wherever they are in the world. So I think there are so many lessons. For academia, um, Goodness and Shedrack had mentioned it already. For academia, it's obvious that we cannot continue to school people the way we have done, for the past 60 years. It's not. I mean, moving forward, it's not proved to be very efficient, and it's something that we need to begin to talk about, at the national level. We need to begin to think about ways to invest in, digital infrastructure in our various public schools. One thing many people don't talk about much is that for some private schools, even though they didn't do it very well, but some private schools were able to move on, even in Nigeria. There were a few of them who were able to do their virtual graduation programs, virtual examination. I mean, it wasn't great because we still have constraints like power and internet, but they were somehow able to find a way around it, even despite the challenges that we had this last year. Sorry. So, so many lessons for academia, for private sector, even for us as individuals.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Ebenezer. And I often hear digital infrastructure, digital product, and I'm wondering what about young people in the rural communities, young people who may not have access to internet. Do you have what do you think? How can the government, the policymakers also try to reach them in this new normal?
Very, 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 very important. That's one of the most important lessons that we've learned from this pandemic. The fact that there's a huge digital divide between those who live in urban centers and those who live in rural areas. And even those who live in urban centers, I mean, you notice that our internet is lagging somehow, even on this call. even those who live in urban centers are still struggling with internet connectivity and strength of bandwidth and things like that. The truth is, we did a survey, a couple of people and I, under policy shapers, and we took part in a COVID-19 hackathon. And we found out that from our survey, the two biggest constraints to students in rural areas, urban areas, I mean, it was like a central common denominator for all of them, was power and internet. We cannot, like, these two things are the backbone of, you know, at the backbone of the new normal. We cannot have a new normal in Nigeria if we're not able to invest in broadband and invest in power. Power had been a long, winding issue for the past 60 years, back and forth. The truth is, we need to begin to look beyond just the national grid. We need to begin to think of ways to incorporate rural renewable energy, even in these rural communities that have, water sources like streams and, wind and solar and things like that. We need to also implement the national broadband plan. So we have a national broadband master plan, which, it was first done in, I think it's in 2015 or so, and then there was a new edition which was recently commissioned last year. We need to move beyond just plans on paper to actually start implementing them. With the national broadband plan, the cost of internet will drop drastically for almost everyone. I mean, everyone will tell you that Nigerians, we pay highest for internet. I mean, if you do a good scan across Africa, we should be the ones who pay the most for internet across the continent. If the cost of internet drops, if we have a lot more fiber optic cables passed across, the country, not just in urban centers, also in rural areas, we'll be able to facilitate access for these people who are in the rural community, especially the schools. And finally, if we're able to, I know this is something I'll talk about later, but if we're able to invest a lot in education by increasing our national allocation to education, in the past 10 years, Nigeria hasn't invested more than 8% of its national budget to education. I mean, UNESCO says the least we should do is 20%. We've not done 10% even in the past 10 years. That doesn't show that we take education seriously. So that's something that we need to look at, even as we move on in the new normal.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. And you emphasize that we need to move beyond plans on paper to actions. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why we're having these discussions. Actions will be taken next. We hope so. And based on what you said, Ebenezer, I'm also looking at a report by the International Labour Organization, which was filled by over 12,000 young people across 112 countries. It was from the survey, it was realized that despite schools' effort, despite efforts to introduce digital learning last year during the heart of the pandemic in 2020, that despite that, over 65% of those who answered the survey said they learned less, and 51% believed that their education would be delayed. So and I think you've touched on some few things, because I wanted to ask that, how do we completely rethink education? Because the truth is education and decent work go in par. So people with higher levels of education have better job prospects. So if we're able to ensure that the quality of education does not drop down despite the effects of the pandemic, we will ensure, that means young people will have access to better jobs in the nearest future. So, and that also made me look at things in these two ways. So young people that have been, because of the pandemic, so we now have two kinds of young people now. So we have those whose education have been stalled. So, and we have those whose education have been stored, but they have some form of learning or virtual education. And we have those who do never have access to any learning, any training, despite the what will I call it? Despite the fact that they
Sorry, guys. It appears Nika's internet went off, right? Did she ask a question before she left?
Yeah, I think she
Just so we
was
can
trying
continue.
to.
Why?
Yeah, I think she was trying
Okay.
to ask about the gap between young people in general accessing decent work and the current state of the educational system. So this is looking at young people who are in school and young people who do not even have access to the formal education system. How do we bridge this gap? That's like an idea what I got before we lost her at some point. So
Okay.
I think she was addressing that to you, but if Dr. Akpen wants to jump in, that's fine, depending when she comes back.
Yes, I think she's back now.
All right.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear
Okay.
me? Sincere apologies about that. My internet went off.
Okay. So, am I responding or wait for?
Get the question? No, please go ahead and respond.
Okay. Okay. So, I think our first challenge started when we began to stereotype education, right? So we have decided to, for a very long time, define success by the guy or the lady that has graduated with a degree from the university. So the guy with a polytechnic and with a certificate from a polytechnic or a college of education already feels disadvantaged. So success is now about, okay, I went to the university, so that's where it starts from, and that is how we started getting it wrong. So first, there's that huge gap, and last year, even for those of us that have been playing around digital, we agree that handling everything 100% online was kind of weird because it was a sharp division from what we ourselves had not necessarily been exposed to. So talk more about those who probably don't have this kind of exposure. So before the pandemic happened, they were going to classes, sitting and listening to the lecturers or their teachers. Now they have to sit behind a device, connect in their houses, and for children, they have those toys they are going to play with, or there are a lot of distractions. How about homes where there are no quiet areas where the children or the students can be able to sit and then listen quietly, or even having good access to the internet. So there are a lot of these biases that are against the conventional Nigerian, if I'm going to use that word. But I feel that first we need to broaden or probably democratize the idea of education. So you are not necessarily educated just because you went to the university. We need to open up the space. So let's give a broader definition to it. That's the first thing. So I should define that I don't feel like going to a formal education. It doesn't make me a failure, right? So I feel, okay, I am more interested in something technical, so I should still be able to do that and leverage digital skills to advance it. So first, once we do that, and like Ebenezer said, we need more investment in education, and we need to also hold more of our subnational leaders to account. When you look at the data from, say, UBEC and how much funds the governors are assessing, it's appalling. So we cannot expect that development comes, and that's why we're saying we need to open up the space more for resources to trickle down to the grassroots, because if we get it right at that level, every other place will fall in place in shape. So first, in closing that gap, first we need to make everybody comfortable that, see, success is not defined necessarily by going to a university. You can be successful without necessarily having that university degree. The most important thing is adding value to society.
Okay, thank you very much,
So,
Dr.
yeah,
Shadrach. And yes, because of time, Ebenezer is a good example of that. Ebenezer, you did not go to a physical university. So can you please tell us if, can you just tell us your experience very briefly, and if you think you made the right decision by acquiring higher education through virtual learning all your life? Yes.
Good decision.
And
I
also,
think it works for me. I believe that, just as Shadrach said. Can you hear me?
yes, I can. I want you to also
yes,
speak on
Sorry.
how it affected your career trajectory. Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay, so yeah, so just like Dr. Shadrach said, I think that education needs a broad definition, right? I finished secondary school in 2007. but I'm only just working to finish my bachelor's now. I've been working for 10 years after secondary school. Of course, I've done so many other programs, right? I've done other specific. So if I want to learn how to blog, for example, I would do a course on blogging. Then I'll learn how to blog, and then I'll gonna start blogging. If I want to learn how to maybe do short film documentaries, etc. Like when I did the Thompson Foundation program on journalism now, I studied that, got a certification for it, and I started doing documentaries, and I added that to my research work. So did I make a good choice? I think time will tell, but so far I don't think it's been a wrong decision. I think it has worked for me. I also think that we're getting to a stage in education where the barriers, you have to finish this before you finish the hierarchical way which we view education would soon I mean, you can't jump to do a PhD, of course, but I think that the way people have to go from step to the other would soon be, the lines will soon blow away. A good example is, so in 2019, I got this scholarship from Harvard to do an executive program, right? Usually people do executive programs when they're done with bachelor's or master's, etc. And I finished that program. Then I started doing a micro master's program at MIT, which I will soon finish. And if I finish the micro master's program, I'm allowed to, without the bachelor's degree, I'm allowed to apply to do a master's program at MIT if I'm one of those selected, right? And I've been doing all of that from Port Harcourt, Nigeria. I didn't have to travel anywhere. I didn't need to know one uncle that knows merit. The fact that, it narrows our corruption a lot. There's huge corruption in the education system. What you do is what you get, right? If you don't pass, you don't pass. If you write the wrong thing, you write the wrong thing. It's obvious in front of you. All of those human factors that affect people's, scoring and grades and things like that are usually cut off in the virtual world. So I do an exam. If I put the right answer, it is the right answer. I put the wrong answer. One lecturer cannot say because he hates me, doesn't like my face, my ears, or whatever, I just hate that guy, so I will just fail him. That doesn't happen online. So schooling online has given me the chance to walk side by side with schooling, and that has given me so much chance to explore so many places. So I've been learning like a lot of skill-based programs. So I want to do this thing. I go and learn about it, do a course about it, and then I go and do it. So I don't have to wait for 4 years before I can start practicing what I've just learned. I'm always on the go, learning and practicing along the way.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Ebenezer. So, for everyone just joining us, we are discussing how to rethink education and access to decent work for youth in the new normal. So, our panelists have been sharing great insights. So, please, if you have questions, kindly share. I will be picking some questions in a few minutes. Okay. Moving on, I also want us to look at this. The report from the International Labour Organization also showed that 1 in 7 young people has lost their jobs due to the pandemic. And if you have to calculate that in Nigeria, that's like 4 million young people that have lost their job. So, and this is a ticking time bomb. So, I want my panelists now to kindly share what should policymakers, the government, what kind of initiatives can they develop to meet, as in to ensure that they create programs, initiatives, or maybe job access that meet the conditions of the new normal and that will empower our young people.
Is that thrown to someone?
Yes. So, who wants to go? Let me ask Goodness. Yes, please.
Okay.
All right. So, I'll just give a little bit of reflection on our recently run decent work survey that's at Nigerian Youth SDGs Network. And this is like in line with this question and the reality of what an average young person in Nigeria face. I say being a Nigerian in Nigeria, young person. So we had this decent work survey, which was in line with the Nigerian Youth Employment Action Plan, which is a plan meant for young people on employment, ensuring decent work and employability across board. And this was done in partnership with UNDESA, with ILO, and the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports here in Nigeria. And the survey, which we had both the online survey and we even had state-based surveys to cover up young people who have lower level of education and may not be able to access it online. But at the state level, we had youth champions who would ensure this. So we had over 200,000 responses. And to a large extent, we wanted to understand what is decent work for young people, what would ensure that you have decent work as a young person. If you want to send a message across to these policymakers who would put in the frameworks to ensure that you have a decent work, what is that message you want to send to them? And one thing that stood out for these young people is that the reality in Nigeria is that there is no enabling environment for young people to thrive in terms of decent work, in terms of employment. We understand the skills gap in terms of employability because when we go to this say private sector or public sector who are employing, that's the employees, they tell you many young people are not employable, meaning that they don't have the skill sets to get this job, right? We understand that reality. And we still go back to our educational sector and say, what skills are they equipping these young people with that will make them be favorable or just be at the vantage point to access this job. So there's a gap between education, the skills they are equipping young people with who are going into the labor market. So it's like you have to put extra effort to your own personal and professional development to stand out and get this job in the labor market. But young people were saying that, oh, there's a need for connection, oh, there's a need for higher level of education, oh, there's a need for empowerment, especially if we want to go into entrepreneurship, business management. Young people were excited about agriculture, but then the fact is that there's a lot of innovation and a lot of investment that needs to be done in those areas. We also looked at the different divides to, okay, as a woman, what's decent work for you? What are the challenges you face? Because we cannot be blind to the gender dynamics to this. So in essence, when we had this survey and the idea behind it was that we did bring these findings and if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, very
please.
well.
You're audible.
All right. So the idea is that this is young people giving their inputs, and what we can get from it is that young people in Nigeria are ready to put in the effort to access decent work, but they need an enabling environment. Enabling. Can you hear me? My network is
Yes, please.
fluctuating. I would like
Yes, we
to.
can.
Yes.
Okay, great. Policymakers
Yes,
should
we can.
ensure that the environment from the educational system, the skills they are equipping young people, is what the labor market is in need of. It will surprise you that the syllabus of many Nigerian tertiary education is what is being used in the 19th century. They have not evolved to what the 21st century needs. And that is the gap we are facing as young people. Even young people in the informal sector, they can't be left behind. How can we standardize and upskill vocational education? How can we look at young people who are into business management? How can they evolve into what is happening across the world? So these findings from our Decent Work Survey and even the Youth Lab
Okay.
events, which we interacted with other
Okay. Sorry,
CEOs,
goodness.
be very
In
useful.
one word. In one
I
word.
think I have to
What do you
pause
think?
now because time
Okay.
and
Okay. Can you hear me?
that.
Yes. In one word
Yes, we
or
can
in
Yes,
hear
one
you
yes,
now.
sentence. Okay. In one word or in one sentence, what should we hold on
Yes, I
to from
can.
the answer? Did you get a question? In one word, in
Okay.
one
Yes.
sentence, what should we hold on like from the survey?
Okay. In one word, the message to our policymakers is that they should create a thriving environment for young people, educationally, business wise, agriculture. There should be an inclusion of young people in every process so that we understand what they need and the solution that can actually
Okay.
work.
Okay, thank you very much, Goodness. Thank you very much, Goodness. Ebenezer, please. Somebody asked a question. What does it mean to have a decent work in the new normal? What does it mean to have a decent work in the new normal? Dr. Shadrach, if you want to answer that
Yes,
too.
yes. To have a decent work in the new normal means that you're able to work in conditions that do not, dehumane you. I mean, very humane conditions that help you to grow, and conditions that are very balanced. Because working online is very easy to forget that you need to have work-life balance. Working online, sometimes you can work till the next day
Mhm.
and midnight and the next morning. But there's need for work-life balance. There's need for people to be able to grow and do other things as well. So working, a decent work in new normal is work that you can earn well, to make a good living, and a work where you can have work-life balance. That's my own definition.
Okay, absolutely brilliant. So, more like the digital infrastructure that we've said that we enable the work, young people having the digital infrastructure, then also being able to balance work and life. And because it's a new normal, things are
Yeah.
not the way they used to be. So it's not the go out 8 to 5, you take transportation, then you come back and all of that. So you're in your house and you're using your digital devices. So thank you for sharing that. So my last question is, how can young people engage the government constructively in the matters that concern young people? So youth participation in their community. Just very briefly, just maybe 30 seconds. Yeah, so let me go with good
Dr. Shadrach,
Where are
goodness.
you
starts.
directing it?
Dr. Shadrach, do you want to?
Anybody can start.
Sorry, I didn't hear
Okay,
that.
Okay.
Shadrach.
Whiteboard.
Is that okay? Let me take that.
Yes, please
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So for me, I think it starts with knowledge, right? Young people need to understand that they have a very vital role in the governance structure of our country, and it's a global phenomenon, and we need to accept it and embrace it too, because you cannot form more than 60% of the population of a country, and you're not actively involved in the process in terms of participating in who becomes your next leader. Like I always say, elections, politics, yes, social media is important, but that's not where the ballots are casted. So you need to know first. Secondly, get acquainted to what the law says and what government has allocated. Yes, we're saying a lot is not being allocated yet, but for the little that has been allocated, let's ensure that it's appropriately channeled.
Okay.
And the only way you can do that as a young person is to be able to know and hold our leaders accountable. So that's how I
Okay.
feel we should be more interested, ready to participate.
Okay, because of time, I might not be able to go around. But thank you, Shadrach. I think you've spoken more about like even young people in the global south can learn about this. So thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you've learned one or two things, and I hope the policymakers as well will be able to take some key insight from our discussions today. So if you want to learn more about the decent work survey that we conducted in Nigeria, please you can visit www.decentwork.ng. So a big thank you to our panelists, and thank you to the organizers for this opportunity. So
Thank you.
see you at the closing ceremony in a bit.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for having